Listen Lanarkshire is a community radio station governed by the registered charity Getting Better Together Limited. Therefore, the radio station itself retains political neutrality, and any political views or comments aired as part of political discussion programming or otherwise are not the views of Listen Lanarkshire, nor of Getting Better Together Limited. The station has a set of key commitments found on the Ofcom website, and we adhere to all necessary Ofcom rules. For more information or inquiries, please contact us at radio@shotshealthyliving.com.
Hello and welcome to What's the Point? Apologies, our political disclaimer should have been up at the start of the show, but for some strange reason it didn't play, so we'll play that as soon as we get the chance. So tonight I'm Greg Lennon, I'm your host. This is What's the Point, the political podcast and radio show that isn't afraid to say what others won't. So we're going to go heavy tonight, gentlemen. We've got 3 huge topics on the table. Members' salaries and expenses. While frontline services are being cut and transport for school kids is under fire, and councillor cells tighten their budgets or loosening them for a buffet, we'll definitely be diving into all the aspects of members' expenses, etc. within the council. We're then moving on to Duffy and Logue and the motion shutdown. We're asking the question, when motions are being ruled incompetent before they even reach the floor, are we really operating a democracy in North Lanarkshire, or is this just the big rubber stamp? And we'll be talking about our formal letter to the First Minister, John Swinney, this week, raising concerns about transparency, accountability, and whether the North Lanarkshire Council's chamber has turned into a private members club run by the same 3 people, especially within the SNP group, that's for sure. And joining me tonight, he's a Bellsell bowler himself, the people's peer, and the only man to show up at a budget meeting in full cycling clobber, helmet, high vis, padded shorts and all, despite parking 5 metres around the corner for his front door. He says it's for mobility, but I reckon it's just in case he needs to pedal away for a governance scandal. Give it up, it's our very own Jerry Brennan, the Bellsy Hill bowler, or as I like to call him, the Tour de France, or should I say, the Tour de Force. Good evening, Jerry.
Good evening, Greg, and as always, it's an incredible pleasure to be here. It gets smoother and smoother, his monologue, doesn't it?
Do you know what it is? I forgot my glasses. I actually can't read that.
You forgot your teeth.
Anyway,
very pleasure.
Anyway, and we'll be joined tonight by a real powerhouse, someone who's not afraid to call things as they are. Councillor David Crint is back with us tonight, Jerry, to bring the straight talk, the facts, and probably a few stories that will make the Labour group sweat. And of course, we're opening the phone lines to you. We want to hear your rants about the expenses scandal that will no doubt unfold over the coming weeks in relation to the North Lanarkshire Council expenses saga. Furious about the way that motions are currently being took, or if you've got something to say about democratic debate, we want to hear from you tonight. So you'll be able to call us tonight on the phone in, and we'll put that number up in a wee second. And this is your platform, so call in, let us hear what you've got to say. And you can also follow us on TikTok, Instagram and Facebook and YouTube, and it's all under What's the Point. If you've missed any of the previous radio shows, you can contact us as well, or you can go back and listen on wherever you get your podcast. And that telephone number for tonight is 07379 399 228. I'll read that again. It's 07379 399 228. Why no, call in. So gentlemen, let's get started. Jerry, let's kick it off.
Kick it off then, son.
Kick it off. So we're going to be looking straight away at salaries and expenses, David. So this week, Jerry, you and I were messing about on our council's website, and we came across an interesting wee sort of tidbit in there about members' expenses.
We did.
And in the members' expenses part, although there is nothing illegal about claiming expenses, we would never ever say that. However, there's an interesting part in there about mileage and how much each member is claiming for mileage per year. Now, the accounts are only showing for 24 to 25, but we are eagerly awaiting to see what 25 to 26. David, how would you like to hear about the top 5 members in North Lanarkshire Council and the values of travelling expenses that they currently claim.
It's actually going to be really quite interesting, because historically the local press used to do this, and I don't know whether there's any plans for the local press to cover these kind of things, but they always did a kind of forensic look at members' expenses. So yep, let's hear your figures.
So are you ready, Jerry? You want to give a wee guesstimate?
I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to give you a drum roll.
And right now I'm trying to find the actual list of expenses. So, number 1, Councillor Jim Logue is coming in as the council leader with the number 1 expenses.
And that shouldn't really be that surprising, given that he's the head honcho, if you like. So, what are we talking about figure-wise?
So we're coming on to the figures just in a second, as soon as I can find this. But basically, there is others in there who are all members of that Labour group, Jerry. Mm-hmm. And within the Labour group at present, it seems to be that they're the highest recorded for all expenses claimed in year 24 to 25. And I'm frantically just trying to find what the actual figures of that was. If you give me 2 minutes to get to it.
It's interesting because it's broken down, isn't it, the expenses claims, because there's the kind of mileage allowance, and then there's other incidental expenses and rail fares or taxi fares, and anything that you deem as being appropriate in the conduct of your business. And the mobile phone is provided by the council, so that automatically gets added to or allocated to each individual member, so, whether you use it or you don't.
No, that's true. So when Greg mentioned today that we were going to have a deep dive, if you like, at expenses, I'm going, right, okay, I better have a look at my own. And lo and behold, for the 3 years, the only expenses that I've actually had is
exactly the same. It's like my phone. You look at the money that's been attributed, as I say, directly to the members, just because the council provides you with the IT equipment and phones to speak to constituents if you want to use it. But it'd be interesting to see these figures, because obviously when you start breaking this down,
I'm good to go. I'm good to go. So Councillor Jim Logue, £1,640.75 claimed for mileage. For mileage. Number 2, hotspot Labour councillor John McLaren, £1,574.10. Then Labour councillor and former finance convener Tom Fisher, who is now the whip and business manager of the Labour group. He's on £1,299.38. Then we get to my own ward colleague and Labour council convener, Councillor Michael McBake, who's on a tidy wee £1,155.15. And then we get to Councillor Curry, who's on £1,126.80. Now, that list is a bit extensive, by the way, because there's others in there. We've got Alec McVeigh, Coatbridge councillor, £1,199.89. Right. But then there's a strange one, Jerry. We've got Councillor Anne Ballinger up in Cumbernauld. And with Ballinger, what we have is, if you give me 2 seconds to get that figure, the figure for Anne Ballinger's mileage is £1,119.65. Now, I find this a wee bit strange, considering the fact that if we look at the total expenses claimed, and when we look at the total expenses, it equates to about £17,500. But £17,500 at a time when we're already cutting school transport and we're doing all these different other things, and these expenses are quite significant.
I got a whole lot of money, bitches count it for me. Bottle keep popping that water bag, whole jacket. It's a party, it's a party, it's a party. It's a party, it's a party, it's a party.
Now, don't get me wrong, the Lord Provost is in there. He's in there with a sizable chunky expense, but he covers the car, the Provost car within that. Right. So I don't think that's actually classified as a personal mileage expense. But when you're looking at this, it's quite phenomenal.
So, wait a minute, just so I'm clear, sorry, that's just the mileage claimed.
Just the mileage claimed.
So that's not including any, God forbid, taxi fares,
hospitality, like that.
So So, right, my understanding just now is that HMRC allow you a maximum of 40 to claim 45 pence a mile.
For 10,
Up to 45.
10,000,
up to the first 10,000.
Yeah.
But quick maths, and correct me, I haven't. But even if you take one there that's £1,200, that means that you're travelling 2,600 miles.
Well, you would think so. You would think.
Jerry, show me the money! Jerry, you better yell! Show me the money!
Again, how you're getting 1,190? So how many
right.
double journeys? And then the other bit about this is if a councillor's taking a passenger, there's an extra 5 pence associated with that per mile, so you can bump it up. So if I wanted to take you,
let's say I'm reasonably accurate with this 2,500 miles. Council doesn't sit 52 weeks a year.
No,
So-
we're in recess quite a bit.
So you're in recess quite a bit over Christmas, certainly over summer. So you might be, 40 weeks maybe?
perhaps
40-ish weeks, give or take, I don't know, something like that. So I'm struggling with this.
I suppose it depends what you're claiming for. If you're claiming for...
Well, that's just mileage.
just
No,
mileage.
Yeah, but mileage to what? So I'm going to put my hands up there. It's never even crossed my mind to think about claiming mileage.
Well, here's the funny thing. I did a search on us as well. So Jerry Brennan, 0 claiming mileage. David Crichton, 0 claiming mileage. Myself, 0 claiming mileage. And any other member of Progressive Change, there's a 0 claim.
So I put
mileage.
myself up for this. So
Yeah.
anyway, it's just never crossed my mind to claim expenses. But what might you claim expenses for? Attending community council. Not every area has got a community council. Residents and tenants meetings. Not everybody has a residents and tenants meeting. Claiming to travel and meet constituents. If they're doing a home visit, would you claim for that?
Well, it's interesting. It's interesting this. By the way,
Group meetings. Oh, wait a minute. Group meetings as well.
You can claim for political group meetings, right? So if a political group meeting's been held at the Civic Centre, you can claim for your ward area all the way to the Civic Centre and back.
I need to feel you, Jerry! Show me the money! Jerry, you better yell! Show me the money!
Now, it's a bit bizarre, but here's the interesting one that I kind of noticed today. There's a few names on this list that we know who attend, because we don't see them, ever. And we know who are attending via online. Now, perfectly honest, I attend the majority of meetings online if I can. But again, coming back to these individuals who I speak to colleagues when they're in the chamber say that these people are never ever there. They're always online as well. So there's claims for travelling expenses there. Is it a case that these claims are just solely for the benefit of attending a group meeting? Because if you're not attending a committee, how can you make that claim?
I think people would have an issue with the idea that of public money being spent on getting yourself to and from a political group meeting that doesn't necessarily serve the ward.
Well, was anybody...
I wasn't aware of that, actually.
Does anybody get paid to go to their work? Do you know what I mean? Do you get paid to get in the bus?
Well, not if you're going to... if you're going to, generally speaking, if you're going to the same place at work, you're not going to get it. If you've got extraordinary expenses beyond what you would normally
But this
travel.
is a vocation. You've chose this.
I see
You've
it as
chose
a
to do
vocation.
this.
I put myself forward, and I understood that there would be some expense to me,
Yeah.
and I was quite happy to accept that. And therefore, I've never claimed and won't claim for expenses probably between now, and that'll be over 5 years. The only expense I'll have is my mobile phone, so that people can get in contact with me.
Which is an expense that all elected members have, IT equipment and phones, and I don't use.
Well, it is, it's just allocated by the
I don't
council,
use
isn't it?
anything, and I have a £34 bill in relation to an expense. I don't understand why.
But is that like the total expense? So, just going back to some of the figures, is that just the mileage claim, or is that?
I'm just talking mileage claims at the moment. I'm no total expenses. However, what I do find interesting is take the leader of the council for talking's sake. That 1,778. Now this is only 24 to 25, so financial year April to April. and that's last year. So in that year it was £1,778.52. Now, on top of a salary, which is what, Jerry, 50 odds at that time?
61 now.
61 now, but 50 something back then. So you're talking about that's an additional £1,000 odd pounds.
It's difficult because the public don't really see value in politicians. Let's be, whether it be local or national, and that's just the perception. And you're going to get people, hopefully. There's an enhanced payment coming on to these individuals, especially within that top 5 bracket. They're all conveners, so they get an enhanced payment already on top of their councillor salary. So is that a reason that maybe their mileage is higher then? Well, again, even at that, should they be claiming mileage if they're getting a convenership position at that and an enhanced payment? Should it? I mean, conveners, certainly Labour conveners, I mean, the photo opportunities leading up to election time is brilliant. Is really quite high, so maybe that's included in some of the mileage. But if you live in your ward, let's say you don't. So I don't quite live in the ward, so I think I'm about 4.8 miles or whatever, 5 miles roughly away. So just come back on the figure. I'm just looking at it. It works out roughly about 65 to 70 miles a week. So if I'm going to and from the ward to meet a constituent or do what I'm going to do that's there, that means I'd need to be there 7 times a week. But here's an interesting one for you, because it differs in relation to what a Labour member is, right, and what their position is. So John McLaren's the convener of licensing, is it? No licensing, something, right? But basically, if you take him in comparison to, let's say, Burgess, who's the Deputy Provost, Burgess is sitting on £1,156.17. In comparison to McLaren's 1,600, is Burgess going to less things than John McLaren? That's a surprising one, because the Deputy Provost. Deputy Provost must, I'm assuming this, must be provided like council travel to some events. I would have thought he would get. I know the Provost does, but I don't get the car. Yeah. Provost does. I don't know where Deputy Provost does. I remember. Maybe that is allocated as a cost to them. I remember last term the business manager then promoted to the deputy leader of the SNP group used to get the council car everywhere. He used to jump about everywhere in the council car. Jordan Linden. He used to take that car all the time in relation to any travel or business that he was conducting. He did. Can I jump back? You mentioned about online and off and in person. Yeah. That's there. Does anybody track that? Well, that's a question. I've asked that today. I've asked whether or not these registers are kept for online and offline.
Be interesting, like any employment that I've ever had that paid expenses, you had to detail the day, the journey to and from, the mileage itself.
Absolutely. Well, it's an HMRC requirement when you're employed.
Having never completed one at North Lanarkshire Council, I don't even know what that form consists of. It would be interesting to get a look at. But again, let's be honest, not employees. For the listeners as well, we're not employees in North Lanarkshire Council, so it's one of this ambiguous roles. It's a grey area, isn't it? It is a grey area, but I just think it's staggering that £17,275.98 was claimed last financial year for travelling expenses, or mileage expenses. Does that? So in addition to that, then, are there people there that have other costs that's associated? Well, so I don't know, like conferences and things like that. Well, conferences, I mean, God forbid, taxis as well. I mean, is taxis labelled separately, or is that? No, it comes under mileage. Everything's all coming under mileage. Maybe it is a case that the council needs to break this down a bit further to allow for the public to properly scrutinise it, because again, if it's a case that mileage has just been classified for taxis. The reason I ask about taxis and stuff like that, because obviously there's a whole ESN situation development and transport that was provided for kids to and from school, and some of that was taxi, some of it wasn't. It's been severely reduced, if not withdrawn. And it would be a difficult sell for a councillor, I feel, to be able to be jumping a taxi and claiming taxi fares at the public purse to get to and from the civic centre or whatever else. And I'm not saying that's the case, but it'd be interesting to know whether that is the case. I just asked the question, and I'm going to put it out. It's going to sound a wee bit sort of
antagonistic, but I'm only meaning to be antagonistic. This is for anybody listening at home. Do you think it's acceptable that elected members of this council can claim travelling expenses to attend their political group meetings? And no council business, by the way, it's their political group meetings. Should that be able to be claimed?
No, I wasn't even aware that was a thing.
Or is it a case it should solely be for council business if you're attending something, or should we just scrap it? Should it be scrapped?
I don't think you can scrap it. I think
But we're going to make decisions in a budget, coming up to a budget process, Jerry, where we're going to have to make some really, really tough and difficult decisions. And if there's an easy bit of low-lying fruit there and £17,000, because you're looking at it, these elected members are already in enhanced salaries, especially the top five. So the top five of claimants here are on enhanced salaries. They get additionality already on top of their councillor salary for taking up specific roles. The leader of the council, the deputy provost, the provost, conveners. So it's their requirement to attend these committees. They're getting paid to chair these committees. Why should they be getting additionality and travelling expenses to cover their mileage cost?
Well, I think there's some mileage left in this discussion, even after tonight, to get some clarification.
You look at people that travel from Lanarkshire to Edinburgh or Glasgow, whatever it is, every day.
Aye.
And the peak fares have been reduced. That's absolutely fine, and that must make a huge difference to a lot of people that's travelling. But that's out their own earned income. That's their net income that they're paying that out of.
Yeah.
So, and it's not 45 pence.
That would be raging. That would be raging if I was reading that there's members in there claiming they're getting enhanced payments. They'd have to do that job anyway and be a convener or be the leader of the council, and then they've got the audacity to claim for additional mileage.
As you've said, it's perfectly legal.
Yeah, it's perfectly legal. I'm only saying that.
But just because it's perfectly legal doesn't mean it's right.
Well, at a time when everybody else is tightening the purse strings and watching what they're spending.
Well, is it morally legal?
That's the question.
Is it morally legal? But,
absolutely.
Anyway, I'll not dwell on that. I've put in a couple of letters asking, particularly for all members' attendance this year, and I've also I've also asked for if a record is kept for those that attend online and those that attend in person, because again, if we come back to these mileage figures, there is a number of them that they attend just solely online, so it'll be interesting to see what dates that they're saying that they were in attendance and physical attendance at the Civic Centre. Perhaps there might be a couple of questions in relation to that at a later date. Well, moving swiftly on, gentlemen, swiftly on, I would like to talk about last week, and in particular, obviously we don't want to go into too much detail in relation to something that's already a live legal proceeding. However, we did get wind that an individual was up at court, which led us to question where the SNP left our investigation at the time when we were all being hounded out the SNP group in North Lanarkshire for asking very difficult questions over the suitability of its then leader. And that led to a letter going to John Swinney this week, an open letter. And in that open letter, Jerry, I'm sure you've got it there if you want to read it out.
I don't really want to read it all out because there is there's quite a lot in it. But basically, during the by-election in Bells Hill, back in 2023, is it 2023? Commitments were made by the then First Minister of Scotland, Tumza Youssef, outside Cooper's Butchers on Bells Hill Main Street. Other butchers are available.
That's a brilliant thing. Hi, big City Council by-election coming up, so this is Joe Candidate. How you doing? Well, I've said we will investigate some of those allegations that have been made and complaints that have been made about how the party could have handled the process better. So we'll look at that. We're going in confident it'll be challenging, given, of course, we know the circumstances and the context behind the by-election. We've got
but a commitment, a promise, a solemn promise was made by the then leader of the SNP and First Minister of Scotland that an investigation would ensue because they hadn't got things correct in North Lanarkshire in particular, where disgracefully the SNP lost the administration because the leader of the SNP group, Jordan Linden, had to stand down following newspaper reports of offences of a potentially sexual nature. And what resulted from that was that a number of members of that SNP group, a father and daughter included in that, defected from the SNP, moved to stand as independents, and the SNP lost their majority, and the Labour Party, who'd lost the election, then became the largest party in the council, supported by the Conservative group, and they took the council from the SNP.
And those two individuals that you mentioned in relation to independence, because they get convenerships at the back of that.
It's murky world. Murky world politics. However, back on this, the Labour Party were fighting a by-election in Bellshill because Jordan Linden stood down there as a councillor.
Yeah, it was a point to resign, yeah.
And the SNP were throwing the kitchen sink basically at this by-election in order to...
Who did we have campaigning in that again? It was
Joe Budd. Joe Budd was the
candidate.
Joe Budd was the candidate.
But you had Fulton McGregor, Neil Gray, Jamie Hepburn, Stuart MacDonald, everybody in North Lanarkshire right out there, powerhouses trying to make sure that the SNP had an additional councillor within North Lanarkshire and win that seat back.
Well, they couldn't really afford to lose it because at that point I think the SNP had gone from having something like 37 elected councillors to 25.
Yeah.
Because we had all left.
Yeah.
And the Sophia Coyle and Michael Coyle had left, and Jordan was no longer a councillor. He had to resign. So all of a sudden they're dissipated. Their numbers are. I mean, they were. If they'd kept that ratio up by the time they hit year 4, there probably wouldn't have been any SNP councillors left. But anyway,
if it was a minority, it'd have been folded.
So in Bellshill, they're all campaigning. Hamza Youssef gives an assurance to Alison Cameron, who's the convener of the Uddingston and Bellshill branch,
Very good friend,
and a superb person, yes, that an investigation was to ensue.
Oh, that's right.
And all issues relating to the debacle that took place in North Lanarkshire, including the situation which led to that particular individual getting through vetting and all the rest of it and becoming the leader of the group and leader of the council, and then the spectacular fall from grace. All of that was going to be investigated. And what happened, Greg?
Nothing.
Hee-haw.
Nothing.
Hee-haw. Right.
Nothing.
So we followed just the logical processes of leadership, right?
Yep.
So when Hamza decided that he was going to step down from his position as the leader and First Minister, it fell to Mr. John Swinney.
Yep.
So any work, I'm pretty sure that when Hamza had his handover with John Swinney, that they both discussed in detail the promises that were made to the people of Bellshill, people of Lanarkshire, people of Scotland, that this investigation was going to take place so that we could learn, SNP could learn from the mistakes and put systems in place that were going to protect that. And thus far, we've not heard anything. And I think it was absolutely right and proper, Greg, that you took it upon yourself in conjunction with the leader of your political group to write to John Swinney to ask him for an update. And what you did, with the help of individuals in our group, including Mr. Crichton here, was give him the timeline, the breakdown of all the milestones in these events, going back to July 22 when complaints have come in. The newspaper article has been run in the Sunday Mail. Between August and October then, 8 SNP councillors, including Greg, myself, David, we leave. There's allegations about you are all of a sudden sprang up.
Brought out of nowhere.
Out of nowhere.
It's
when
not,
you've
it's
asked,
not like the Coatbridge SNP members to make allegations against
absolutely
elected members.
So you began to ask questions at the group meetings to say, oh wait a minute, we used to have a leader of the group, we used to have an administration here, now we've got hee-haw. Leader, can we have an investigation into what happened? And nothing really happened.
Well, it wasn't. It was more to do with the fact that the leader of the council, the leader of the SNP group, because again that was thrust upon everybody. It was a deputy leader's position, and then all of a sudden she was in the spotlight for being the leader. Has systematically targeted me and then targeted other members of your group to get us kicked out, because we were the ones asking the difficult questions, and why she did not suspend that member, because ultimately it was within her gift and within the rules to suspend on the basis to make sure that for the protection of the individual first and foremost. Indeed. But the second part of it, if there was any credit or credibility the claims, then really in effect it was doing the right thing.
I think it was doing the right thing, and until that investigation was completed, a suspension pending that investigation should have taken place. But what actually happened was that allegations were made against me. You
yes,
for asking the horrible question
with the same penmanship and all the letters.
It was wonderful. It was wonderful, and indeed it got to the point where a full hearing was convened to have you unceremoniously kicked out the group. And in fact, the former Speaker of the Parliament was there, Linda Fabiani. She was asked to come and hold court in council chamber. Of course,
never followed any process in that meeting because it's recorded.
Well, I was at that meeting.
Were you there?
And do you know who else was at that meeting?
Right.
The individual who had previously been the leader of the council.
So he was allowed to attend that?
He was allowed to attend
and
that.
vote on the person who was his biggest critic?
Potentially to vote on you being kicked out. And I remember at that meeting, the leader of the group at the time, Tracy Carragher, still currently the group leader, stating that if she had 10 minutes more, you would have been kicked out of the SNP there and then.
Oh, that would have been disappointing.
And the only reason that didn't happen was because, what did you do?
Oh, I took legal action.
You took legal action?
Yeah, took legal action. But the interesting part of this is again that systemic sort of presence of Coatbridge members. Now, I would not be the first elected member this has happened to. There was a very prominent court case where Councillor Julie McAnulty at that time sued certain individuals within Coatbridge and Bells Hill. And I think at the time it was Councillor Alan Stubbs who was caught for misleading the trial, etc. There's something out there in relation to the judge's comments and credibility of the witness. But again, there's individuals who are the key instigators in that entire facade. Now, again, it was proven that Julie McAnulty didn't say that in a court of law. It was highlighted and she was awarded damages. But again, same individuals were involved in that process. I think Fulton McGregor MSP was called up as a witness to that. There was other key figures within the SNP Coatbridge branch that was called into question in that. And really in effect, if it's the same players all the time and the same cronyism and protectionism, what chance has the SNP got in North Lanarkshire? Now, I'm not one to dwell on any specifics of this court case because that will take place separately. It will be entirely its own thing. I want to talk about the process within the SNP group. Now, at that time, David, you were absolutely irate, I recall, in relation to kangaroo court style. I don't even know how you would call it. Again, just to evict and kick out, and we're going to do this our way, and no governance coming for anybody at all in party headquarters. It was rather bizarre and bold claims, because this is where the hypocrisy kicks in as well. There was bold claims and misleading claims that national secretaries were involved, legal compliance officers were all on board. And it transpires this was all fabricated nonsense. Now, we've got more recordings in this than anything else. How many meetings did we collated recordings for? And where one thing says at one point, it turns out to be a load of nonsense come the next point. Even secret recordings to a certain degree that individuals have sent us, and that's conversations between other political opponents in that Labour Council. And again, just sending us these conversations taking place with certain individuals and key instigators within the SNP group.
I think as time goes on, a good number of individuals, especially those who were in the executive of that branch, of that SNP group at the time, are going to have some serious serious questions to answer depending on the outcome of that case. Individuals, including those who were members of the NEC and individuals who were drafted in as honest brokers to oversee group meetings and who made comments in writing.
There's an extensive list in this. We had Lorna Finn, who's the National Secretary. You'd Kelly Parry, local government convener and leader
of Midlothian Council,
who shot you down countless occasions and you're disciplinary. Then on top of that, you also had Ian McCann, who's the party's spin doctor, Malcolm Tucker. And in addition to that, also we had Stephen Bonner, MP at that point in time. You had other individuals, Kirsten Oswald, MP, who was heavily involved, not to mention Linda Fabiani, the former presiding officer, and certain other individuals, and it looked as if there was a protection racket taking place so that leadership could not be removed. Now I think that they thought at the time, and I remember a conversation with the National Secretary at that point, they were thinking it was a power move in relation to taking on the group, and that was the way it was being presented. It wasn't anything at all to do with that. Again, the position for us was it was a moral position. Do we want a leader who has been reported in the press, all these terrible and heinous allegations, or do we want to have a political grouping that's going to serve the people that elected us to put us there in the first place?
The whole system after the previous leader, who now faces the court charges, which you rightly say we can't mention, was a morally corrupt circus. And that is the only way of describing it. And everybody that you've mentioned there, and Mr. Swinney will not be listening, but I hope that somebody picks this up, because Mr. Swinney, the stuff that we've got, sir, that you will have to have a look at, and the names that are associated with the stuff that we have in terms of evidence and the behaviours that took place within that SNP group in North Lanarkshire, is going to present them with a major problem. You want to come back in, but I'm sorry. You finish. I'm off on my kind of rant, because we both know that the actions that were taken against you, unfounded and can be proven to be such.
Visceral garbage.
The expulsion of myself and Councillor Paul Damasio. Absolute fabrication. And when you actually break that down, and the listeners will be fed up, you know, sort of going into process and stuff, but I can assure you that the only reason that took place was that there was a threat to Councillor Carragher's leadership of the SNP group, and it was supported by a number of other individuals that's there.
Who had to be shut up.
All new elected members completely loyal to the MSP of the area. It was a complete
I sat in a group meeting when you had been suspended. I don't know whether Jerry was there or not. I remember a group meeting sitting there, and 3 members of that group, quite happily to name them, name them. No, you had direct questions for Councillor Stubbs, Councillor Larson, and I think the other one was Councillor Sullivan. I'd need to check my notes back, because I've got a lot of notes on that, as you can imagine. And they were calling for me to be forced into giving them details of anyone that I knew that was involved in collating information about meetings or recordings or whatever else. And I stated on numerous occasions I neither had the recording, kept the recording, circulated the recording of any kind of meeting that's there, and yet Councillor Carragher allowed that assassination attempt to take place. There's a whole series of other stuff. You talk about systematic. There was a systematic removal of people that were causing problems for them that they couldn't handle because they couldn't answer the questions. That they are going to be held to account, because this stuff's coming, Mr. Swinney. It's coming.
You had the photographs at the Christmas night out.
Oh my God! I'm going to be honest, right? I was at the Christmas night out.
Did you attend that?
I was at the Christmas night out right up until the point where the now leader of the SNP group in North Lanarkshire, Tracy Carragher, entered with Fergus McGregor,
Fulton's brother,
in tow with the former leader of the group, Jordan Linden. And I felt at that time that this was their attempt to reintroduce him, to re-establish
at that point
Jordan within the group.
I've got an email from Tracy Carragher saying that he will take a full part in the group going forward. The stuff that's to come out of this.
Yeah.
I just find it absolutely ironic, the fact that he was allowed to vote in mass suspension and various other things, considering that was the one asking questions about.
I hadn't seen for months, and yet your suspension vote come up, and all of a sudden drafted in.
I think I still hold the record for the longest suspended member of the SNP.
But you're still suspended.
I think I'm still suspended. But
Anyway, I'm
well,
going
there's
to
an interesting
hold on.
There's an interesting
Back to
point
that. I had to, at that point in time where they entered into that Christmas night out,
Yeah.
without any prior knowledge that he was going to be there, I made my excuses and left because there was no way on God's earth that I was going to be captured in a photograph.
Yeah.
Given what potentially could have happened, and then now we know exactly what's happened. There's serious charges been brought, 17 that I understand, and the court case has been heard in Dundee over the next few weeks.
This review that we talked about, where this all started, was your question about Hamza Yusuf, now John Swinney, responsible for the review. The review may well have taken place, but there is absolutely no way that result, if there is such a result, can ever come to surface, because they will know that the evidence that we have
significant
from party leadership stating quite clearly that things that Councillor Carragher had stated at group meetings were just incorrect.
You've then got the botched process of Cameron McManus coming forward as well, with allegations in relation to what took place with him. Now, I don't want to get into too much detail in that, but again, he was systematically ignored. Then, when he was claiming the fact that the party had completely mishandled and failed him in relation to coming forward as a whistleblower, there was nothing done until about nearly 3-4 months later, and the time had already kind of left the party for anybody to take notice. And the only reason they took notice is because they were pushed into a position with Hannah Roger running a story in the Sunday Mail, and that was the only reason they did it. But there's an interesting exclusive for you both.
Go for it.
Now listen, take this with a wee pinch of salt, but I so happened to have a conversation the other day there with a couple of NEC members, and when I had the conversation with these NEC members, I was asked the question, because obviously they know the court case is coming up, and perhaps it might be an opportunity to try and silence us and bring us back into the fold, or whatever it may be, who knows. But I was asked the question, if it's a case, Greg, that there is a guilty verdict returned, would you consider coming back to the SNP? Now, obviously things would have to change within North Lanarkshire SNP group, and they would look to try and pursue certain individuals within that process for failing our group and failing the individuals involved. However, listen, as I said again, this isn't made up, this is gospel, and again that question was posed to me. Obviously I didn't give any answer, because as I say, I'm no interested in entertaining any conversations like that, but as I said again, it was an interesting proposal that they're actively looking to try and bring us back into the SNP.
I don't know whether I can take that as being in the NEC, for listeners, is obviously the kind of top
National
echelons
Executive Committee
of the SNP. So
higher echelons.
I would find it incredible that there was even a conversation on that basis, but it's interesting that it's somebody at that level.
You've got to remember, we in particular, I have relationships in the SNP still. I still talk to lots of
friends in SNP.
I still talk to a lot of people in Labour.
Yep.
The bit about it is you're not going to fall out with friends and people you've met all the years just because of what political rosette you wear. And again, the problem for the SNP, in my opinion, you look at it, my history stems back to I was 18 years of age. I've obviously met countless people who have built up close allies and friendships with, etc. Even National Secretary Lorna Finn at the time. I've known Lorna for a number of years. And again...
Is that Lorna that said that there
previous
was
National Secretary, yes, there was no reason for my suspension. It was not unreasonable to bring me back,
and that she'd made that clear too.
Yeah, but our group, that fell on deaf ears, didn't it? Because it was sent to the entire group. So you need to ask yourself the question then, because this is what it comes down to. It comes down to your political MSP. Is it them who's in control, and where's the spine of the elected members who you're representing you? Because ultimately, if they're spineless, then that kind of falls right back in, because it's quite a murky world, North Lanarkshire politics, when you think about it.
Do you think?
Very.
It's quite a murky world. But if you've got individuals who are meant to be in opposition, they're on the payroll then really in effect this all stems right back into that whole circular sort of you scratch my back, I scratch yours, and all this kind of nonsense.
I just found it all a bit. It was all a bit depressing. I mean, I know one particular individual who was a prominent member of the executive who shared with me personally that the allegations that were made against you were a load of crap. That was basically what it was. And yet that individual still went ahead in full knowledge of that to vote to suspend.
We saw the evidence, and I use evidence in a very, very loose term that was presented to members. And there was the same phraseology. There was the same spelling mistakes in a couple of them. I mean,
it was the same.
And you just look at this and you question that, and immediately it was just dismissed.
Well, the bit that fascinated me was Kirsten Larson, because if you remember at the time she was reported for being the one that stipulated the only thing Jordan Linden's guilty of is being a young person.
Yep.
And when it came to the disciplinary for me, prior to that meeting, there was individuals telling me that she was running about because, I represent my ward area, my constituents are the people who I answer to. I don't answer to a political master or a group or anything like that. And she was running about saying, look at these emails. Now that was in relation to Gartcosh Primary School at the time. We took all the administration. She got put in, apparently it was Alan Stubbs who was the convener of education, but at that point an officer, so to speak, who knows, it's hearsay, but the officer says there's no way in this effort he would work with him, and then all of a sudden Kirsten Larson was thrust into the position of education convener. And I'll tell you an interesting one as well in a minute, but thrust into the position of education convener, and the email was to her in relation to Gartcosh Primary because there was no movement in it. And I asked, now that you're the convener, can I get a meeting set up to have a discussion, because I'm now 3-4 years waiting in this school and there's nothing, and I want to talk to you as the convener of education. So basically it was quite a robust response she gave me back, and I think it was about a week or two later, there was obviously, by the time that the new administration took position, I'd spoke to the then convener of education. It was quite helpful, and says, I didn't bother, listen, I'm happy to meet and that kind of stuff. And so when it came back, I says, thanks very much, I'm happy to speak to the new convener. I'll take it forward with the new convener. But an interesting one in relation to that was when we took the administration, and I was in a surgery, and I was holding my surgery in Moodiesburn, and I get the phone call. Yes, somebody phones me and hangs up, and then somebody phones me again, hangs up, and then finally I answered the phone. Yes, this is your leader. I says, excuse me, this is your leader. I don't have a leader. This is your leader. This is your leader of your SNP council group, Jordan James Linden. I says, okay, yes, I'm phoning to offer you a position within the administration. Nah, thanks very much, I'm good, and I hung up my phone. And I wonder why, David, I wonder why.
Well, you knew too much.
Oh, I knew far too much.
Greenhorns like David and I, who had just arrived, we were blissfully unaware of any of the shenanigans that had gone on.
But he managed to create a cult of personality in there, if you think about it. It was an absolute cult of personality, because you had the highest number SNP councillors returned, and the most number, in my opinion, inexperienced councillors. And again, I think that if you've got a flashy show going on and various things like that, it can be quite easy to jump on the bandwagon yet, but very bizarre anyway. Very bizarre. Right, moving on, gentlemen. I think we've. There's more to. I think there's definitely more to come.
The point to be made in this one is that the Pandora's box
is about to be opened.
Is still closed, but not for long.
Well, as I say,
there are individuals in that group, particularly those in the SNP group who were in the executive at the time, who need to think very carefully about what they did and said during that time.
Well, let's be honest about this.
The expose is a bit close.
The number of recordings, audio recordings that we have of private meetings and meetings taking place and group meetings and everything else, where clear lies were being stipulated and stated.
That's the only one.
And again, that's not to mention the amount of written correspondence that was involved.
It's the written stuff that'll make the difference.
Right, so there's hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of stuff, and as I said again, I think probably what we'd be better doing is once everything's all, regardless of whatever the outcome is, everybody would have moved on by that point anyway. We'll just publish everything on our website.
Absolutely.
We'll just leave it all up there.
Yep.
That's probably the best. A big data dump, and then that way it's all our
Unless there's national
storage.
interest in hearing it.
Well, as I say,
And if there is, then I think we'd be quite content to share any and all information that we have.
More than content.
More than content. Yeah.
So, not to dwell on North Lanarkshire SNP group, I want to take a wee look at next week's policy and strategy committee. So today the papers were published for that, and in it there was a review process, a governance review process being proposed within the council.
Governance review.
A governance review. Now, Jerry,
I've had a few motions denied recently.
submitted a few motions in relation to governance and that authority, and I thought this would be a prime opportunity to bring back that discussion again about motions going to full council, how these things are decided, who makes that decision, what is the benchmarking matrix process of deciding a motion. Is it a case because the opposition's all paid, they're on paid positions, and that's on their expenses as well, by the way. You'll be able to check that out and see how much additionality gets paid by the leader of the council to the opposition leaders. How's it only a certain group of individuals who believe in scrutiny of the council are the only ones that seem to get absolutely no motions put forward?
There seems to be a rush now to a governance review.
Oh, it's a significant rush.
It seems to be a rush now. I don't know what's going on in the background, whether our motion, my motion or request for motions to have a review of
Delegated
the scheme
authority.
of delegated authority. And I know we talk about this quite regularly, but the scheme, as it's called, the scheme of delegated authority to officers, are the powers that potentially once sat with elected members, but which now sit with officers, and often elected members have no knowledge of decisions that are made, or indeed about the money that is spent on the council's behalf, without so much as a report going to a committee to make that clear. I sat down during the week with a senior member of the Labour group, right? And I was having a chat with them about the Amy case, which has been to court and is settled. And when I sat down with that individual to talk about that and about the shambles, as far as I was concerned, that it was, and the fact that an agreement had been made by North Lanarkshire Council with Amy, protected by a non-disclosure agreement, and an amount paid to them that was viewed to be advantageous towards the council, but council elected members of the council knew nothing about it. When I mentioned to that individual, who's a member of the administration, remember, they had no idea what I was talking about. No idea. So these decisions can be made. The amounts paid out could be in the millions of pounds, but because they are hidden behind these delegated powers, elected members won't know about it, and will have no means or rights, in fact, to ask questions. And importantly, that means that we are unable to fulfil our critical scrutiny role as elected members.
I think it's worse than that. I'll be perfectly honest. I don't think within the party political structure there's actually an appetite or even an opportunity. We know within the SNP group that there just wasn't, to ask serious questions of, and it would just be brushed away because effectively a decision had been taken by maybe 2 or 3 members of whatever group it happens to be, a limited number of officers that might be taking these major decisions. You never get to it. But it's interesting about the Amy one that you raised, and I don't want to dwell on it, but
I only mention that because it's the most recent, David.
Well, it is, because I then went and asked for a copy of the closing accounts, because North Lanarkshire Council were in a joint venture company with Amy Public Services Limited, and that was to provide the road services to North Lanarkshire. So they were a 33% shareholder, so an organisation of significance, basically within sort of company structure. And I looked at their accounts, and effectively last year, they were actually producing 1.4 and a bit million pounds of profit, which was up significantly from 23. So this, sorry, from 24's accounts. So this is ones for 24-25.
Right.
And within the same set of accounts is that the board, 3 members of the delegated board of this limited liability partnership, agreed to pay Amy nearly 6 million, which meant that we now have a company that's going to be wound up with liability of 4.7 million pounds.
So from profit to loss?
To loss within months of it winding up. So rightly I went to one of the designated members of the LLP who was appointed by North Lanarkshire Council to sit on that board, make these decisions, sign off the accounts. There's a fiduciary and there's a legal and there's just a total responsibility if you're a member of a limited liability partnership. And I've written twice now to Councillor McPake, and Councillor McPake has refused to respond to basic questions I've asked and said, look, sorry Michael, I need to understand how you made this decision because you've signed off on this. There's 3 people as signatories of that limited liability partnership, and basically you've gone from a £1.4 million profit to £4.7 million of liability. I need to understand that. And there was other questions that was involved in that. Total ignorance in the basis of no reply. Nothing.
Many days.
Oh, well, I've sent 2 reminders. So effectively I went back and said, look, please don't ignore it because that is a tactic that's just there. And it's one from the council leader, I might say as well. Unfortunately, I've written to Jim Logue in the past, and Jim's never responded.
In relation to the reported 43 or £34 million settlement figure we made
it's
Amy.
a clear tactic that they don't want to answer questions that are difficult. But these questions need to
Why
be...
do you think it would avoid questions? Scrutiny, considering the fact that they're the administration. Do you think it's a lack of knowledge? Do you think they're just not clear on their brief?
Without doubt, it's about a lack of knowledge. And I've been reading quite a lot about the various different roles, right, that elected members play, and how they differ from the professional knowledge that officers have. It's clear as the nose on your face that officers could clean the floor.
Oh, absolutely.
Clean the floor with elected members and conveners, given the extensive knowledge that they have of their field, the professional qualifications that they have.
Any less.
And in that respect, I think you're right. I think it's absolutely a knowledge deficit that exists, where often conveners will sign things off because they expect and anticipate that it's correct and right.
There's another
but they can't. I don't think that they always have the skill set to qualify that.
The thing for me is there's no professional background with half of these individuals as well.
That's what I mean.
Look at where they're coming through, and again, that's no disrespect. And politics should be a broad church. But I come back to a point I made earlier. You used to get in the council retired professionals, retired teachers, retired this, retired that, and that was kind of what made up the political landscape. Yeah. Now you look at it as every sort of chancellor out there or anybody that went for the milk that day that so happened to be an election coming up. It's actually quite frightening, the fact that over £1 billion organisation, the lack of educational attainment within the elected members, as I don't know everybody's sort of educational background, but you can clearly tell when they speak that there's something missing.
There's a £6 million swing and your figures.
That's just one of the
those 6 million. That 6 million has to be.
That leads back then again to Davy's point that you made previously in relation to finance. You wrote to the convener of finance asking with regards to the test that had to be taken by all elected members to prove competency in relation to being part of that committee. And as of today's date, I think there's only you who's took the test.
There was myself. There might be one other SNP member at that point. When I took it, and I inquired again, this is another tactic. So you go back, but it's basic courtesy. Going back to your point, Jerry. No, you go back. You've got a convener that's sitting there that hasn't gone through the very training that he's directed me to do.
It was suspended now, wasn't he?
Well, he is suspended for different reasons. But if you can't get a group of councillors who are supposed to work collaboratively for the benefit of the electorate, and they can't even answer individual emails within themselves with legitimate questions. Now, there's a problem with this one because and I put it in an email, and it was perfectly polite to Councillor McPake, and said, look, if you're not in a position or don't have the understanding to answer these questions, then point me in the direction of who it is, because he ignored the first email that was there. Still no response.
Audit Scotland, take it Audit
But
Scotland.
That is the problem, because that's where it's going to end up, and the seriousness of that is that there are legal consequences.
Yeah, I'd just report it and then
So,
get paper trail it. But,
anyway.
but the point is the governance review, because this is what I want to stick on. Do you think the governance review, I would love to think that your motions, Jerry, that you're pursuing with regards to scheme of delegation review and various other things, I would love to think that that's the reason.
I would like to think that is the case too, Greg.
Do you think
However,
it might actually be something to do with the big news story that broke in Glasgow the other week there in relation to the Chief Executive and significant pension payments and early retirement payments?
I think that there may well be something in that. I think
because the two individuals promoting the motion for North Lanarkshire don't strike me. it's the most
We've asked very
recognising.
pertinent questions, and Jerry put them forward following the press article about the Glasgow City Council and the additional pension payments that may or may not have been
still waiting on a response.
correct. So we're waiting a response to that, but they're quite pointed questions, and they'll be difficult to answer, because when you start talking about additional pension costs, and something is considerable, when you talk about hundreds of thousands, it doesn't necessarily mean that the individual has got that in their pocket. But if there is enhancements, or there's been lack of penalties or actuarial valuations, or whatever it happens to be in terms of individuals retiring from the scheme, then the cost of that has to be met. And if the cost of that is an additional pension cost, then it has to be divulged.
The context. Sorry to interrupt, but the context.
That was in good flow there.
The context needs to be understood about what happened in Glasgow.
Yeah,
so in Glasgow, the process. Here's the processes, decisions, and actions that enabled 5 senior Glasgow City Council officers, not councillors but paid council employees, to take significant early retirement and redundancy payments fell short of the behaviour and standards expected of public servants, who are all expected to adhere
How many
to
early retirements was on senior positions in North Lanarkshire?
Oh, there's been a few recently.
There was a lot recently.
2 in particular were noted in the national press.
And those roles on the redundant, might I add, they've never been made redundant in their positions. So
between 2021 and 2024, 5 senior officers left Glasgow City Council, including the former chief exec. The restructuring proposals appear to have been approved by some individuals who directly benefited. So given the seniority of the officers leaving, restructuring proposals should have been considered by the relevant council committee for councillors to scrutinise. The absence of independent scrutiny from councillors, formal documentation including details of how decisions were made, and evidence of value for money is deeply concerning.
That was the Audit Commission, wasn't it?
Indeed. So, but those decisions were made, as I understand it, under
delegated authority. Did we
in
make
another council.
Did we have any opportunity to scrutinise those early retirements?
Not at all.
No.
Not at all.
Again, what we have to do is draw this straight right back to the leader of the council and why he's allowed for the majority of his powers to be delegated under the scheme of delegation.
Well, it's interesting that comes out. It's interesting we put forward quite pointed questions.
Jerry strikes again
about people leaving, severance, early retirement, whatever else. We've asked quite strong questions on the basis of how that was calculated, whether there's costs and all this kind of stuff. And then all of a sudden we get this motion from, and I've got to say it's quite worrying, because it's 2 people in the same ward.
Yep.
Who write something bedfellows.
Who write something that, quite honestly, doesn't make sense. And you look at it, I'm just going to read a part of this. Council agrees that the consideration be given to the formal recognition of long-serving employees with the appropriate length of service milestones to be determined as part of this and reflecting common practice as appropriate across the public sector.
That's a common practice.
There it's there.
There it is.
There it's there. Glasgow City Council audit report.
So what recognition? What costs are involved? Who are we talking about? What grades are they talking about? Bear in mind, remember that this Provost knocks back our proposed motions on the basis of cost, operational matter,
whatever he deems as competency that day.
It doesn't hit the markers.
Yeah.
So who's written it? Because it's not. It's
Do you
not
know
the
what
two
I think? I
councillors
think
that's
what we need to do is we need to come back next week and we'll do a full episode on the Provost and how the Provost deliberates and what the process is and what the answers are. I think we should get a list of motions prepared with regards to the motions that have been presented to this council and the reasons for refusal, and put it to the public and ask them, by the way, do you agree with this? Is this proper? That this is incompetent for these reasons, or is this made up just for political
It's
point
active
scoring?
silence, and let's be perfectly
Right,
honest. That's what it is.
Right, I think we need to hurry up. 'Cause
Quickly.
we've got to go to a quick song.
There's 77 councillors in North
Yeah.
Lanarkshire, right? I'm one of them. I put 4 motions to the Chief Executive to be considered by the Provost, who determines whether or not it's competent or not. And all 4 occasions, it's come back to me to say no. So of the 77 councillors so far, there's one motion out of 77 councillors going to council on the 2nd of October.
That doesn't even make sense. There's nothing.
It arguably makes no sense,
There's
but,
nothing
It's a
accurate
load of
about that.
garbage. It's a load
but
of garbage.
may serve to give some cover.
I've had
Correct.
one motion accepted this year, and that was in relation to the 40th anniversary to the miners' strikes. Other motions that I have submitted is requesting that the Lord Provost publish motions, all motions and refused motions, and show to any elected member what the competency bar is for him. Going to design a matrix and a scoring matrix or a benchmarking system where you can actually score motions. Absolutely. Jerry, absolutely. Then we get to other aspects of how motions are formulated and everything. Again, all these motions, no, absolutely not. Then we get to delegated authority, absolutely not. But then all of a sudden next week there's big rush to try and get a review of governance out there within North Lanarkshire Council. You would think somebody's looking for a new job, lads. You would think somebody's looking for a new
timing,
job.
and there's a reference in that committee paper that you shared with us earlier.
Yes.
That it is just quite pertinent.
You would
Yeah,
think
there
there
is. I mean,
is a
individ-
potential promotion coming up for somebody in higher office somewhere, or perhaps it's
Or
the launch
somebody in
of
a
a
prominent
political
position
career.
for a period of time,
Yeah.
and therefore one must be demonstrating that one's own house is in good order.
Yes.
You know.
I
So-
wish them well in their new challenge. That's for sure. Anyway, we're cutting to a couple of songs just now. You've heard enough ramblings for us. We'll be back after these few songs and opening up to your call. So if you've got an issue, you want to speak about anything, you can give us a wee call on the number I shouted out earlier on. I can't actually remember what it is.
07379 399 228.
Excellent, thank you. Hello and welcome back to What's the Point, your number one political podcast and radio show telling you all the secrets of North Lanarkshire. And just now I think we're going to come back onto a subject matter we know.
Yeah,
Go.
for me, it was actually one that I scribbled notes and we'd moved on before it was there. But I'm going back to these mileage figures because some.
I need to feel you, Jerry! Show me the money! Jerry, you better yell! Show me the money!
Some of them are actually quite chunky. But one of the things is you were saying that we can't, at this stage, decipher between mileage and what might even been a taxi fare or whatever else that was involved. And I'm just thinking that one of our own members, Barry, who is partially sighted and obviously registered blind.
Yeah.
So obviously can't drive
Yep.
to and from the Civic for
He
council
must
meetings
cost,
or whatever else
the
it's there.
council
I just-
a great deal of money.
Well, I was going to say, I mean, is that a legitimate? I honestly don't know what Barry's expenses are. I've never looked at the figures, but I don't know whether you've got a full list of them that's
Yeah,
there or whether
I've got it
it's
here. Barry McCluskey is like £25.
What?
Yeah,
what in total.
yeah.
Right, so he's obviously funding taxis because Barry obviously doesn't drive.
Yeah.
That's there. So maybe the question is to go back to council and say, or back to the expenses office and say, let's break this down, because I'm aware in the background there was certainly SNP councillors at the time at that point openly saying travelling from Cumbernauld and back that they could be £60 to £80 a taxi, and I thought at the time, God, that's expensive for you to be paying that.
Excessive.
I
Seems
never
excessive.
thought for a second that it might actually be on
Well,
an
the
expense basis.
Barry McCluskey, other travel, £25. That's the only
Right, well,
expense he's
maybe,
claimed.
You've piqued a wee bit of interest there for me, because I think that the mileage thing needs to be broken down, is to see whether there's any taxi fares in that. And
A deeper dive.
Well, there's an independent councillor I remember for last term as well, who used to get a taxi every Monday night for our group meetings to and from the Civic Centre.
From where?
So for Airdrie. So they always have a taxi booked on account, and they just jump in the taxi, take it back to Airdrie and back into the Civic Centre for any time there's a group meeting. So you're talking about this is the bit that doesn't really sit easy with me. If it's a case that you're attending a political group meeting, then really in effect, why should you be claiming the council for mileage expense on that? Because that's you've chose that. You've chose to be part of that political party. You know what's
I
to
hear
be
you,
expected.
brother. I hear you. Anyway,
we'll be moving on to calls in a minute. Phone lines are open, so just be aware, gentlemen, that we will be cutting to a phone call as soon as one comes in.
I was going to say,
Go for it.
is there an update on the GMB situation from last week in the letter?
Well, that's a very peculiar situation that we find ourselves in, Jerry. So as you're aware, I submitted a motion this week, basically after last week when we went to committee and we asked the question that was raised by the GMB and in that email. And within that, I had highlighted at committee there was a potential for an amendment based on the answers to the questions that I had raised. And unfortunately, I never got a chance to raise it, so I submitted it as a motion. And basically what the motion was, council agrees to restart the process and ensure that trade unions are involved, all trade unions including the GMB, and to make sure that the workforce are part of the consultation process. So that was it. So today I get a refusal email saying that the motion was deemed no competent because you're risking entering into the operational and all this other nonsense that the Lord Provost has decided to dictate that any reason to no allow that to come through. However, yesterday it was rather bizarre because, again, the leader of the council put out an email to all 77 members dispelling the email for the GMB. So it seems as if there's like some sort of game at play. So somebody's talking rubbish, and really in effect it's to try and figure out who it is that's talking rubbish. So if anything, you would allow the motion to go forward so that you could at least have some sort of debate on the subject matter, and again for the leader to then prove with officer reports etc that here's the facts. But for some strange reason our El Presidente doesn't operate like that. It's a dictatorship. He makes sure his Lord Provost does his dirty work and he's bidding and shutting motions down. Poor Kenny. Poor Kenny.
We must remind the listeners at home that the GMB, one of the GMB Scotland organisers from the Women's Campaign Unit, because it's mostly female workers who are impacted on this, but they claimed that they had been ignored by North Lanarkshire Council and blocked from advocating on their members' behalf. And they further commented, regretfully, North Lanarkshire Council is the first council which has refused to even engage with a trade union rep on the issue of job evaluations, which could mean a change in the terms and conditions of a large group of council workers. And that's a really damning thing. And I'm not surprised that the Labour Party, the Labour group, would be unnerved by that.
It would be, but the council leader's email that he sent to everybody, or I've certainly seen it, that's there.
Point of order.
Okay, go for it.
Are you disclosing any confidential information that could be perceived as a data breach? Point of order.
No, that was really funny.
Point of order.
That was hilarious. When the attempt was made to try and silence you, and that absolute piece of nonsense. Anyway, but the email went to all councillors, for what I can remember. That's there. Did you receive it today about the GMB? And
was that today? Was that today, the leader's email? Because I thought it was yesterday.
Was it
was it today?
I'm sure it was yesterday.
Okay.
It was yesterday.
It was before they knocked back my motion, I'm sure.
Oh well.
Aye.
Right time.
We've all received it, but it's basically saying That's not true. No, that's not true.
So
That's not true.
I'm sure that whoever it was at the GMB must be thinking, hey, wait a minute. So if he's got something that can prove that his claims have been ignored and not been included in
the
meetings,
leader of the council sent us all the email he sent Rory Steele for the GMB, didn't he?
It's not just Rory Steele that's making the claim. Rory Steele is making the claim, and Cara Stevenson, GMB's organiser from the Women's Campaign Unit, is making that. It's not one.
No.
I guess if it was an isolated individual or an isolated statement, that would be different.
Do you think that it might be the case then?
Sorry, don't talk over me when I'm talking over you.
No, listen, what are we saying here? Do you think hypothetically it might be the case because the GMB union is not the prominent union in North Lanarkshire, it's Unison and Unite to a certain degree, that the prominent
possibly,
unions.
Greg.
And GMB is normally known for being a frontline worker union, and so in effect, is it a case that the authority perhaps, or Jim or others, are looking to try and shut this down because given the fact that if you're a Labour member you need to carry a trade union membership,
GMB fund the Labour Party to
quite
some tune.
significantly.
Absolutely.
I mean, goodness me, not only was reviewing and pulling ACC reviews because his Labour masters demanded it, then really in effect if he gets another tap on the shoulder for paying off a trade union funder or a funder for the Labour Party for the GMB, and it could be soapy bubble.
Could be. Anyway, I just thought we should probably update the good listeners.
There's another point as well, but I do think that we have to come back to is that idea of this governance review coming in next week for Policy and Strategy Committee, because I don't think we're done on that either. If you think that, again, for the past year and a bit, that we've continuously hammered on in relation to governance structures and processes, the irony here is, by the way, right, there's a point in the agenda, and it's about civic participation or citizen participation. We've recently went through a process of submitting a number of petitions, right, and they're actively pursuing some sort of governance structure for citizen participation in committees to be transparent and all this kind of nonsense, and yet you've kicked elected members out of chamber for raising petitions. You have changed the petitions process to rip that apart and shut it down.
Yes.
And yet that within this policy and strategy document going for members' vote, then really in effect what they're saying is we want this process for members of the public to have their say and be more involved in committee process. How bizarre.
It's not bizarre if you want to shut down all debate. It only becomes an issue if you want to display, for whatever reason, that your local authority are open, they work in partnership with elected members, they're respectful of elected members, and not only elected members, but they're respectful of the electorate. It's your council. These are your decisions. We act on your behalf. The reality is far from that, and we know that. We know that the administration will put through whatever the administration wants to put through, and that will be at the expense of everybody else. That's just reality.
Yeah, but you've got to look at what they put through, and again, you just need to look at some of the proposals and everything else that comes through, and you think, how much of that is just been put across Jim Logue's desk or anyone else that's convener basis from council officers to say, this is what we feel needs to happen. And it's then not about debate, because there is no debate in that chamber, and Jerry's raised it before. So there should be, the whole basis of a civic chamber is to debate the issues that come forward. But there is none, because it's closed down.
Do you think he's fit to be leader anymore? Do you think he's fit to be the leader of North Lanarkshire Council? Because if you look at it, what he's done is and again, that could be other people within the Labour Party will be going, no, great leader, that's political democracy and various other things. But if you look at it, he's entirely lined up, no political debate taking place within that council. He's managed to shut down and control every single convener, so no convener ever comes back with separate agenda items or things that are contentious or things that are on the pulse in relation to what's taking place in North Lanarkshire. they're governed by the officers in making the decisions and what the committee agendas are. Then they've got the audacity to launch this review, and no doubt under Labour instruction that Labour want to pull the review for policy and strategy as a tokenistic piece of nonsense. And again...
Well, it's not though, is it? Because there was mention, I'm not on the Policy and Strategy Committee, but there's mention in the papers that was there.
Jim's the convener of that.
All right.
Yes.
Right, okay.
Yes.
But
Let's steer you away from your standards complaint, fella.
Okay. You want me to stop there? That's fine.
It's laughable.
It's code for be quiet.
It's laughable. It's laughable that it appears now. It appears on Jim's committee.
Let me just say, there's a few officers' ears perking up there for a moment. That's for sure. That's for sure.
It's a laughable set.
But the point being here is again, if you look at the complete and utter shambles that has been his time, because really in effect, okay, Labour members will argue the fact there's been investment in school hubs and community hubs and the plan for North Lanarkshire and all this other stuff, but what does that really mean for the people of North Lanarkshire? I know as a resident of North Lanarkshire, I want to be able to walk down my street, see the grass cut, my bin's emptied, my wains are happy at school. Surely that's what we should be aspiring to, the bread and butter and the basics.
We can't,
rather than all this aspirational nonsense and new buildings and shiny light switches and all this other stuff.
We're David's right, we're repaying a hell of a lot of debt. We're repaying a hell of a lot of debt on borrowing. We're repaying a hell of a lot of debt on PPP projects. And that something has to give. Something has to give. There's other issues that are protected by delegated.
I go back.
Hold on a minute, Greg. There's other spend that is not going through the committee structures or councils that you don't know about. I don't know about, because that sits nicely with the officers, and we don't know how much money that potentially could be going through and spend can't go through and spend because it's going elsewhere. That's just
how many out of court settlements.
I couldn't tell you.
Interestingly, I've only a few days left on that Freedom of Information request that will detail the settlements that have been made over the last 5 years.
There's a show in itself.
Yes,
and it'll be interesting to see how that's broken down. So it was also interesting that when you make the Freedom of Information request, I got an email back saying that's too wide an area for us. You'll need to narrow it down a wee bit, which I did. But the information we get back will actually be, whether it's a show for you guys or not, I have no idea, but there's certainly a good
I'm
amount of
going to ask the
information
question again. Is he fit to be the leader of the council? Let's go back to that. Is he fit to be the leader of the council, given the fact that the amount of public apathy out there in relation to how the council's currently being ran? There's also massive feeling and sentiment towards the fact that people believe, whether right or wrongly, that money's wasted on certain things.
Well,
and again, I come back to my own sort of area in which I'm a councillor for. There seems to be this idea of neglect and forgottenness in relation to what's been delivered.
The answer is yes, right? The answer is yes, he can run again. And let's look at what he's done, right? He's absolutely put the SNP group in a box. Right? They just sit there. He's managed to keep the Tories on board, despite the fact that he doesn't need them anymore, but he might need them next time around. You just never can tell. They've managed to contort some kind of arrangement which means that groups like Progressive Change, for example, who will scrutinise and ask horrible questions, we can gang up together and kick them out because we're the conveners. We'll get our members within the group to...
Or the opposition's on the payroll anyway.
And nobody's going to contest it. So somebody's going to say, oh no, I want to raise a standing order under standing order 50 to get you. I'll say it, I'll third, I'll fourth, I'll fifth it. And then you're going. So if you look at that, you look at the masterful way that they have in my opinion, destroyed any potential for debate.
Do you think it's masterful? I think
it's brilliant, Greg. It's brilliant. No, it's
nonsense.
Brilliant. They've destroyed standing orders to the
you
point.
You would have to be a half-wit to not
Greg,
recognise what's took place.
Greg, it's happened in plain sight. Standing orders manipulated to the point where debate is gone. Pretty much. The 6-month rule means that you can play around with
things.
But
it's on plain sight, Jerry.
Of course
that's the difference. So there's no opposition voices. You've only got a group of 7. So a group of 7 and 70 councillors are remaining silent on the fact.
Apathy and ignorance. And I say that in a gentle way. Ignorance in as much as there are elected members that I know of in that council chamber who don't take the time to understand what's happening in front of their eyes or understand the context of it.
But you say the Labour group, Jerry, half of them or the majority of them don't understand anything at all that's going on. They don't actually understand the out-of-court settlement with Amy. They don't
spoke
understand
to many of them
the
about
contract.
No.
The ones that I talk to don't have a clue whether it's New Year or New York.
No.
So again, if it's a case that within the Labour group he shut down debate internally within his own group.
It depends what your measure of success is, because Jerry's got it exactly right. If the measure of success for a Labour politician, he's done it expertly.
Yeah.
He just controls what needs to be controlled.
You take your hat off.
He just does it, and it's there. And you've openly said other Labour councillors just have no idea what's happening that's there. If from a public perspective that's there,
he feeds them what they need to know.
He keeps back anything that's not.
Absolutely.
But from a public perspective, no, it's an abject failure, because there's no involvement, there's no accountability.
To him. That's the thing that you can easily see as well, because there's no sharpness there anymore, in my opinion, with regards to who he's surrounded himself with. So if you look at his top table, you've no longer got Paul Kelly, who's quite sharp, Hera Brannan McVeigh, who's really sharp. You've got others in there potentially that could fulfil their roles. Don't get me wrong, I think Michael McBride is definitely somebody who's a wee bit more switched on than others. But you look at it and you look at the trajectory of the Labour group going into the next council elections. Is it a case that a dictatorship's going to win it? Listen, we know we're going into a budget cycle this time. There is going to be a lot of caveats out there, wee sweeteners to say vote us again, look at the great job that we're doing, we've built you another school in this area or something like that. But is it going to be enough? Do people really want that? I'm sure they want people that's actually out there representing them. And is it the time for the independents? I don't know. I think
it's time for change, there's no question about that, but I suspect that the President of North Korea will run again, and he will maintain his dominance over the group, using all the skills and incentives that he has at his disposal to do that.
I'm just very, very hopeful that there's a massive rise in your party in North Lanarkshire, and again, listen, as much as I'm not really a supporter of them, but even Reform and Greens and others, to make that political sort of evenness come and start to, if the numbers are there to try and upset the apple cart and ensure
swamp must be drained.
But it's not even a swamp, it's a puddle. Do you know what I mean? The puddle needs to be cleaned out, because I'll tell you what, North Lanarkshire's anything to go by. We need more sort of democratic process.
Do we have enough machines to clean out the...
Well, funnily enough, no, you've got two brush machines, but anyway, we're not getting into that, it's another show. Anyway, gentlemen, thank you so much for joining. Our time is up, and thank you. See you next week.
Cheers.